I sleep pretty sound, so I was sleeping very sound when I was woken in my cabin. Dian Khufu, Dian Khufu. Khufu meaning dead. So I woke up, I'm putting my clothes on while I'm running along. I'm trying to breathe. When I went into the room, you had tables knocked over, papers everywhere. There was blood on her face. There was blood on her hair. There was blood on the rug where her head was lying. I was in shock. For a moment, there are no emotions. You're numb. Numb. We knew that she had enemies, but she didn't deserve to die like that.
Byanteye igikomere ku mutima cyane kitazamvamo. Izi ngizi nizo zari inkingi y'inzu imeze yubatse gutya. Umuryango wari uri hano, turinjira, ntabwo aryamye ku gitanda, aryamye hasi. Noneho umutwe wari bigaragara ko bakubisemo inyundo, kuko urateruraga ukumva ni nk'ibimene by'amacupa. Ubuzima bwe bwose yarabutanze kugira ngo arengere ingagi.
"10,000 feet up in the rainforest are the last of the mountain gorillas. And you might not find them here if Dian Fossey had never lived. She dedicated the last 18 years of her life to protecting the mountain gorillas from extinction. Rwandans called her the woman who lives in the forest without a man.
Neither destiny nor fate took me to Africa, nor was it romance. I had a deep wish to see and live with wild animals in a world that hadn't yet completely been changed by humans. Exactly at 4:30 p.m. on September the 24th, 1967, I established the Karasoki Research Center. Kari, for the first 4 letters of the Mount Karasimbi, and Soki, for the last 4 letters of Mount Fossey. I have made my home among the mountain gorillas.
The story is so compelling. This woman found her passion, found her niche, and really changed the nature of human-gorilla relations. Dian first visited East Africa as a tourist. She took out a loan, hired a guide, went on safari. She found a way to get there and see gorillas when, at that time, very, very few people had seen them. It was a life-changing moment.
Dian Fossey was definitely a pioneer. I do not think that word has been overused. Before that, nobody had done a long-term study of gorillas. Nobody had studied them month after month and year after year.
She wanted to be the scientist who began the first long-term field study of gorilla behavior in their society, and to take that as far as it would go.
I've been following one gorilla group round all month, and am now able to get within 30 to 60 feet of them. To be perfectly frank, I think they're quite confused as to my species.
In order to study them and learn about the behavior, Dian had to get them used to her. And that process is called habituation, winning the trust. The habituation process is not nice, because you're upsetting this family of gorillas day after day after day. Dian's methods played on the gorillas' curiosity. So she would behave in ways that would elicit a curious rather than an anger response. When she was climbing a tree to get a better look, she would deliberately ham it up. And she found that that got their attention.
I've gotten them accustomed to me by aping them, and they are fascinated by my facial grimaces and other actions that I wouldn't be caught dead doing in front of anyone. I feel like a complete fool, but this technique seems to be working.
Dian lacked a formal scientific training. She was essentially working it out as she went along. Each day, she would hike up to this place, into the rain usually, to find the gorillas, observe them, come back and then sit in wet clothes, typing reams of reports of her observations of the gorillas, with the rain hammering on the tent outside. Just think about that, living under canvas. And only after a couple of years of that did a cabin get built with corrugated iron roof and a bit of grass matting and the possibility of having some warmth.
To do this kind of work, you have to put up with a lot of discomfort, and you also are going to be in isolated situations for long periods of time. She had the determination to stick with it and to put in the time and make the effort to succeed.
I was asked by the National Geographic to film her project, but I went and got myself bitten by a puff adder, which is a deadly local snake, and I lost my finger. And so asked a good friend of mine, Bob Campbell, if he could stand in, and he very happily agreed.
The new photographer, Bob Campbell, is as cocky as hell. He's honestly the biggest bore I've ever met. He really thinks he's the big time.
He explained that ideally he wanted her and the gorillas in the same shot, and she was very reluctant. She felt this unwillingness to disturb the gorillas by going too close. But she was eventually persuaded.
He started capturing these incredible moments. Like the first time a gorilla reached out towards Dian.
That's a shot. That's what he was there for.
When the sun shines in the meadows at 10,000 feet and the hypericum trees are covered in little yellow flowers and the hagania trees have the big droopy branches, and it's like a fairyland. And if a little bit of mist sweeps through, it's very romantic.
I wasn't really surprised Bob and Diane got together. She loved him, depended on him, needed him around.
He didn't just film, he became part of the research, too. He tracked the gorillas. He helped her build up her camp together as a team. Campbell got these pictures of gorillas nobody'd seen before. Nobody had gotten that close to them before.
She'd become famous, the Gorilla Lady. That cover was iconic.
I remember Diane being on the cover, holding the orphan gorillas, Coco and Pucker.
I now have 2 baby gorillas in my care, Coco and Pucker. They were captured by Rwandese park guards, and they were intended to be snuck out of the country for the Cologne Zoo.
They had been captured, they weren't being well cared for, and she offered to look after them and nurse them back to health.
Coco now completely accepts me as her mother.
I think the reason they survived was that they began to love her. The idea of the gorilla as the monster is there. And then Diane transformed our image.
Diane really conveyed how amazing it is to gain their trust, to be close to them. It was something different than just loving gorillas. And she had favorites.
A bright-eyed, inquisitive ball of fluff associates with none of the 4 adult females within the group. And it seems likely that his mother has died. He's come to be known as Digit because of a twisted middle finger that appears once to have been broken. Digit is more strongly attracted to humans than are other gorillas. For some reason, he's gentler with me than with Bob, a fact that I don't particularly regret. He always examines, smells, and handles everything gently, and occasionally even returns objects to their owners.
In the early 70s, Diane had the trust of the gorillas. She was in love with Bob Campbell. It was really the pinnacle of her life, and it's heartbreaking how it all ended.
Had been killed. I said, okay. Since I was the backup consular officer, it was my responsibility to go up. I packed a backpack and then trekked up the mountainside.
I decided I'd go up with her because I knew the way and I knew the buildings and I knew the staff. At that time, the message was she'd been killed with a knife. And it was just hard to imagine. It was hard to believe. It was hard, this just didn't make any sense.
We arrived up at Diane's house just as night was falling. As we were approaching the house, I noticed metal pieces to the wall had been bent up. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And as we came around to the front, there were Rwandan police there. There was the French doctor who had been waiting for me to get up there.
Alors, le souvenir que j'ai de la cabane en arrivant, c'est... ça va paraître stupide, mais c'est le sapin de Noël avec les cadeaux.
We went into the house.
And there she was lying on the floor.
Le visage et la tête en sang.
There was a gun next to her hand on the floor. The cartridge was out of it. She was in her bedclothes. She wore long johns to bed.
Elle était décédée depuis quelques heures, évidemment. Il y avait 6 traces de machette sur la tête et le visage. Donc la cause de la mort était assez évidente.
I wonder why I ever began the hopeless task of trying to preserve an entire subspecies alone.
She'd already had an idea that something like that was going to happen.
She clearly felt threatened by something.
She talked about fear of people.
She had a gun near her bed. We all knew that.
If this was sort of a robbery motive, nothing was taken. Her jewelry was there. Her money was there. It was a couple of $100.
Looked like somebody was looking for something. And how that ties into any reason for her murder, I have no idea, no idea.
She kept her cabin pretty clean. Now you walk into this place of shambles. It's like night and day. The house was just smashed. It almost seemed like someone was in a rage.
C'était un assassinat ciblé. Il était question d'agresser, de tuer Dian Fossey.
The holes into her bedroom. It was quite obvious the tin had been cut and had been pulled back. How could somebody have cut that much and not made a tremendous amount of noise? And why was that not something that was an alarm for Diane?
Why wouldn't she flee? Why wouldn't she, So how did she end up being killed right there by her bed?
Ikintu cyari kindi mu mutwe ni umuntu wakoze ibyo akica umuntu gutya.
I had once in my life seen a dead body, and I had certainly never expected to see a person who had been a victim of murder, a violent murder. And it was somebody I knew. It was Diane.
From the story she told me, putting pieces together, man, she was really right about what she said.
Diane had made enemies with a lot of people over time. But we never expected her to be murdered.
Diane was very cautious of trusting people. Her immediate response to meeting people was not to trust them.
She had such a lonely childhood. I don't think she felt much love from her parents. They divorced when she was small. She had a very acrimonious relationship with her mother, and she blamed it all on her stepfather. She was very tall and ungainly. She always felt incredibly awkward. So she didn't have a lot of friends.
She had been treated badly by people. She liked animals, you could relate to animals because they were very upfront and you knew what you were getting, whereas humans are complicated.
For her, Bob Campbell was the perfect fit. She saw him as the perfect fit.
I call him Twinkle Toes. Thanks to Twinkle Toes, I'm able to get caught up on a lot of work. And it's a small price to pay to have a meal ready for him when he returns from the field. I'm really a domestic sort, aren't I?
In the early 70s, they were really working together as a team, him filming and taking photographs for National Geographic. He loved the gorillas, and over the years, he really was part of that project. So she felt like she wasn't doing it alone.
Bob is so kind. I really hope he'll be able to stay.
Diane was very much in love with Bob, but he was already married. She thought he would leave his wife and stay there with her. But he left.
It was obviously a huge decision not to stay with her.
He didn't want to leave his wife. That just wasn't what Diane had seen on her horizon.
I'm not brave enough to say I haven't been hurt. But it's no good gearing your life around someone if their life is obligated to someone else. I'm deeply sorry for him, only because he can't seem to be true to himself.
If it had worked out, if he had said, I want to marry you, let's go live in Nairobi, she wouldn't have gone, I don't think. So she was in love with him, but I just can't see her even following Bob away from Karasoke.
Diane just completely went to pieces. Distraught, destroyed.
I began drinking early, and by afternoon was finished. God, I hope someone comes up here soon.
You sort of crunch vegetation and you make sounds that they're used to. Her first group that she habituated, she named the silverback after her beloved uncle, Uncle Bert, and one of the females after Aunt Flossie. You recognize individuals at first by the wrinkles above their nose. So Dan called them nose prints because they were like fingerprints. And so you draw the nostril and do the pattern of wrinkles above their nose. It was a lot to learn.
Gorillas, normally they're on all fours. They walk on the flat of their feet and on the knuckles of their hands. But they only stand up when they want to dominate. To look impressive and big and beat their chest. That's to impress a potential threat or rival. And Diane realized that, so as she approached them, she would hunker down. So she wasn't dominating them. She learned to be submissive. It was that method that was Diane's breakthrough.
Diane really set out to get basic data to describe gorilla society. We didn't even know how long do mothers suckle their young. That wasn't known.
Diane had to know where they are at, where they sleep, how the families are doing, how the babies are doing, how the mothers are doing. I think she loved more gorillas than she did for anything, probably including humans.
After Bob left, it became more of animals are nice, people aren't. She became attached to the gorillas individually. It was a personal relationship. The gorillas became Diane's main source of joy, and even a feeling of closeness with another living being.
Digit really looks forward to the daily contacts as a source of entertainment. He often invites play by flopping over onto his back, waving his stumpy legs in the air and looking at me smilingly as if to ask, "How can you resist me?" At such times, I fear my scientific detachment dissolves.
When I arrived at Karasoke in 1976, I understood that I was going to be a research assistant. But it was clear that there was more than just research going on. Active conservation, as Diane called it. There was a rule at camp that if you come across a poaching sign, you follow the poachers. You follow the tracks because the tracks lead to the traps.
When I arrived in Rwanda, the Parc des Volcans had only a dozen park guards. Poachers, most of whom were friends or relatives of the park guards, were free to come and go across the park boundaries as they wished.
What poachers do is they set trap lines to catch mainly antelope.
Most of the poachers weren't after gorillas. The snares that they set for the antelope didn't distinguish between an antelope and a gorilla, so if a gorilla stepped in one, it got caught.
Sometimes gorillas end up in those traps, and they will get hands cut or feet cut or something.
And gorillas can lose a hand or even die.
To Diane, it was as if her family was being attacked. The wire pulls on its hands or its foot, and it rots or it dies of an infection.
The crime scene was not like we would see a crime scene with yellow tape around it and only certain people allowed in and, you know, putting booties on and all that sort of stuff. That did not exist whatsoever.
icyemezo tuzenguruka ikigo tubona koko hari inzira byari ibirenge by'abantu babiri byari ibirenge bitagira inkweto.
Personne ne marchait pieds nus dans le parc. Tout le monde avait des bottes, des chaussures.
Wenda nk'umuzungu wamenyere kugenda n'inkweto we ntiyabishobora, ariko abirabura byo biroroshye rwose.
Qui photographiait l'empreinte sans aucune mesure.
Somebody put a pen down to say, here, this will give you scale. And the man said, well, I know how long a Bic pen is. I don't need it in the picture. So he really didn't understand the idea of putting a known length object down next to a footprint would tell you how long the footprint is. And it was also like that with investigating the fingerprints.
Je n'ai absolument rien remarqué jusqu'à la prise de la machette à main nue pour la mettre dans un sac en plastique. Alors oui, il y a une précaution, on la met dans un sac en plastique, mais si on l'attrape à main nue...
Her hands were clenched and there was hair in her hands. So was she clutching the back of her head as she was being attacked? It was that, and so that's why she had hair in her hand, because it looked similar. I mean, it was dark. Her hair was dark. It was dark. Or did she grab someone, you know, and rip hair from their heads as they were attacking her?
Si vous avez un suspect, on peut ensuite comparer ses cheveux avec les cheveux du suspect et voir si c'est les siens.
When I heard that Diane had been murdered, I was shocked, but not surprised, because Diane had a lot of enemies.
The popular conception immediately would be poachers killed Diane to get her out of the way.
Diane had her own form of anti-poaching.
There was a hatred between poachers and Diane. Diane was always trying to scare poachers. They believe in some kind of magic.
She did terrify them.
Using Halloween masks to cultivate the reputation of a witch.
I've had fun today terrorizing the illegals in the park with my Halloween masks. And they are very effective.
Diane had a vigilante-type attitude towards protecting gorillas, and she felt that she had to some extent, take the law into her own hands because the park authorities were not doing it.
People who had been out in the forest looking for poachers and snares and so on actually caught people and brought them back to camp. They would eventually be taken to the park headquarters, but before that happened, Diane did her own interrogations.
She would take matters in her hands, which was, I would say now, illegal.
She went too far sometimes by intimidating them and humiliating them.
She would put a mask on and do this black magic thing, and she'd whip them with stinging nettles. She just turned them into these kind of sniveling wrecks.
She used to confiscate machetes from poachers. And so she would put them like a trophy right in her room. And so it was not just one machete there.
Diane felt a certain amount of guilt, but she felt she had to do it. She said to me, you know, there's only black and white when it comes to saving the gorillas.
She believed and were convinced that these gorillas are hers. She was protecting her babies, and she would go all the way, would do anything to do that.
Desperate times call for desperate measures, and I think Diane would justify her sometimes extreme behavior by saying, well, I'm one person, I have to be this extreme to get a result.
The poachers wanted food, and she was preventing them to catch the antelope. Poachers were now her fierce enemies.
The poachers want me out of here very, very badly. And I've been told that I'm next on their list. This news doesn't worry me very much, because I am not afraid of them, and am also well armed. I don't even go to the John without my gun, and I have every intention to use it. I remain deeply concerned about having habituated gorillas to human beings. The second it takes a gorilla to determine if a human is a friend or a foe is the second that might cost the animal its life.
The 2nd of January, 1978, was certainly a turning point at Karisoki. Diane decided to make it an anti-poacher day. One of the trackers, just ahead of me, rounds a bend in the trail and says, "Oh, wali ngagi." Ngagi, gorilla. The whole scene was flattened vegetation, so clearly there'd been an extensive fight. And it looked like a young silverback. But I went to check, to look for his face. And when I got to the body, there was no face, there was no head, just an empty, gory socket. And I guess it was a slow dawning on me. It must be Digit. Diane had known Digit since he was an infant. Okay, if it's Digit, we can identify him from the broken finger. So I picked up the arm, and there's just the bony stump of the wrist where the hand had been hacked off. But everything else said it was Digit. clearly there'd been a frenzy. Because the poachers had used dogs to stop Digit from running away. And the body had been speared and hacked. It was the body of a friend. The mutilated, decapitated body of a friend. I set up a camera in a tree to get the men bringing Digit to the front of Diane's cabin. She didn't go to pieces. It looked like a shutter went down behind her eyes. He was Diane's favorite. Diane had watched him grow up.
There are times when one cannot accept facts for fear of shattering one's being. I would rather die myself than to know what he must have gone through when he died.
His death was the end of life at Karisoki as we knew it.
Last Christmas, at the age of 53, Dian Fossey was hacked to death in her mountain cabin.
Look at the way she was murdered. She'd been killed like a poacher killed a gorilla.
Brutally murdered, hacked to death in a crime that is still under investigation.
People were stunned that this American researcher, who had become so famous and brought so much attention to Rwanda, had been killed in this way.
The questions remain about the way she chose to live and the way she died.
What was the motive for killing her? We didn't know.
The whole thing is kind of a Heart of Darkness story. It really is. Especially what's become of Wayne McGuire.
The hunt is on this morning for an American wildlife researcher, Wayne McGuire, as the prime suspect in the murder of naturalist Dian Fossey.
Strands of hair found in Miss Fossey's hand were those of a white person other than Miss Fossey. McGuire was the only other white person in the area on the night of the murder.
I had absolutely nothing to do with Diane's tragic death. She was my friend and one of my mentors. I had everything to lose and nothing to gain by her death.
Diana Krall, This Dream of You. Timeless classics from the Great American Songbook.